He's in this episode of Murder, She Wrote, and the episode's okay, but his character's name is Matt Matthews.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Welcome to Gold, Diamonds, and Death, a James Bond podcast. I'm your 00 host, Jonathan Watkins. I'm a writer for all things under the Cinemasins brand name and co-host of the Behind the Scenes podcast. Joining me each and every week for this endeavor, he is the co-founder of Cinemasins and co-host of the weekly podcast Recotopia, and has a license to kill pointed straight at your fucking heart.
Mm-hmm.
He's also one of my good friends. Mr. Chris Atkinson, how are you doing?
Hello.
How is life?
Doing all right. It's, not that anybody listening to the Bond podcast that we've come out with is going to know this, but it's been, a month since we did the last recording or something?
It's been at least, it's been 3 weeks, I think. I think it's been 3 weeks.
It's one of those things where, we're in the middle of the Timothy Dalton ones, and it's it feels like it never ends because
he's only done 5 films.
He's only done 2 movies and whatever, but doing fine, doing good.
Yeah, recording ahead gets you that luxury sometimes, but it's also weird too because it's like a big gap between two. It feels like we've watched 5 Timothy Dalton films. Is what it feels like.
Exactly.
And I wish there were 5 Timothy Dalton films, but we can talk about that later.
In another life there would have been.
I will say, going into this, not giving away my thoughts on this either way, but when you agreed to do this with me, this was one of the episodes I was looking very much forward to. I've always wanted to have a conversation with somebody about License to Kill. Now I get my opportunity.
Yeah.
I think this is a really fascinating one to talk about. This is a really fascinating part of the franchise. You got the end of the 80s. The Berlin Wall, comes down this year. The Cold War is ending.
I mean, for more or less, yeah.
More or less, yeah. I mean, and Bond kind of plays off the current politics. So when you have big events like this, it's interesting just to kind of see how this movie plays at the time and then where they go from that point, because all of a sudden, who they have as bad guys, maybe they're not really bad guys anymore. And I don't know. Anyway, so this is just an interesting point of the Bond franchise for me personally. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Our first segment, we like to call it Eon Flux.
This is a journey.
I'm gonna make a movie!
We have to go back, Kate.
Wow, how did you know all that stuff?
I did my research.
I don't understand any of this.
What the fuck is going on?
We are going to scour through the history of Eon Productions and give you all the highs and lows that went into the making of these films. So, just the basic stuff here. This is 1989. This is the 16th entry in the official franchise. It is the second and final film to star one Mr. Timothy Dalton, even though Chris and I have watched at least 5 of his films. We're positive.
Yep.
It premiered in London on June 13th, 1989. Oddly, it didn't actually officially get released until July 10th, but they had a big premiere June 13th, about a month before, which is I think that kind of happens now. I feel like the UK always knows about, talks about these films on social media, a month before we ever get it. So, but anyways, it was officially released in the UK July 10th, and then it was released in the US 4 days later on July 14th. On a budget of $32 million, it grossed $156.1 worldwide. Only 34.6 of that was in the U.S. This was not financially successful in the U.S. It finished 36th at the box office, which is easily the lowest. The official Bonds, at least, it finished. I don't remember where Casino Royale fell, but I think it was even higher than this. But I don't remember off the top of my head. Of course, a lot less movies getting released in '67 too, so that's a whole different story.
Yeah, and I'm sure you were about to get to this, so sorry if I'm
no, go for it.
Whatever, but
jump in.
This is a well-known summer, 1989, where every huge blockbuster ever came out.
Yes.
It was Lethal Weapon 2, and it was Last Crusade, and it was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Batman, and blah blah blah. All these movies came out, and there's so many. I was about to say there's so many stories of movies that came out that were good or could have done well that ended up, and UHF was one of them, and this movie, of course.
And I mean, I did have some of that written down. I think you're dead right. Okay, so I mean, first off, the top 3 films of 1989 were Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Batman, and Lethal Weapon 2 domestically. Yeah. Those were the top 3 films. Lethal Weapon 2 comes out, like, this almost kind of feels like a Thing and E.T. thing, although this was not as big of a bomb as The Thing. Or it wasn't really a bomb, but I mean, it wasn't that low grossing. The Thing was a different story. But it is interesting that Lethal Weapon 2 comes out like a week before this. And Lethal Weapon 2 was huge. And I do wonder... And then they're like, well, I don't want to just go see a Bond film. I want to see like Lethal Weapon 2. I want to see something like that. Even though we're going to talk about this Bond film feels more in line with like Joel Silver and a Lethal Weapon movie than it does a Bond movie, which is really interesting. Yeah. But no, I think that's another thing that's interesting about this, talking about this movie, because 1989 is kind of a summer that I feel like started changing like the way summer movie seasons would go. Like, maybe this had happened before, but like I can remember Batman being advertised like in the fall before, you know, it wasn't coming out for like 9 months or whatever. Yeah. And they had full previews of it. Maybe that was more common than I remember, but I don't remember that being common. It is now.
Yeah. I have no idea, but it's very possible that the idea of advertising a movie almost a year before it comes out started around this time.
And then you have all this stuff, it's just everything's opening huge. I mean, it's just a huge summer, and it kind of is a precursor to what happens, because, you know, and like by 92, I mean, this is just kind of the norm. You know, that's when the next Batman, Lethal Weapon, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kid films come out, so that's kind of fitting. But but it also takes a couple years for everybody to kind of get on board with this. So it's interesting. Like I guess like I can see why people felt License to Kill felt like a thing from the past, but I think that's just because nobody went and saw it. 'Cause, I don't know. We'll talk about that when we talk about the movie. But yeah, so also to bit Ghostbusters 2, which is not good, but it was a huge hit. Yeah, that was another one that had come out before Bond. Ghostbusters 2, which I think both you and I have the same story, have kind of the same history with that, where that felt like the first movie where I realized not everything was good.
Yeah, I'll never forget watching Ghostbusters 2, and then I played a baseball game. I think I was in a rec baseball game either that night or the next day or something, and I remember telling my teammates, or some of my teammates, that I was like, man, Ghostbusters 2 wasn't very good. I was really surprised by that. Like, how is it that this is the first time I've ever felt this way, like really disappointed in a movie. Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Well, and I think it's because we're both huge Ghostbusters fans. So we were stoked. I was like 13. I guess you were 12. And I mean, it just seemed like, how is this movie not going to be perfect? I remember even watching, like, they did this big like they were on the Tonight Show and the Today. I mean, like, I watched them on Oprah, and I was, you know, like leading up to it, all these interviews with the entire cast. It was such a big deal. Only to be followed up by maybe the next big deal was that fall when Back to the Future Part 2 came out. And although I like Back to the Future Part 2, I actually do like that movie, but I know that was, and it made a lot of money too. I do feel like it was a little disappointing at the time to people. I think people have definitely come around on it. And they haven't come around on Ghostbusters 2 because Ghostbusters 2 is terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. Ghostbusters 2 has a surprising amount of people.
It has a fan base. That's fair.
But Back to the Future 2, I remember people not liking because the people couldn't really follow the little time travel. They go, so it's so confusing. It's so confusing. And then Back to the Future 3 comes out, and everybody's like, oh, it's finally back to normal. But I think over the years, maybe it's hard to gauge these things. 2 has finally gotten its just dessert. Like, it's people think 2 is better than 3 now, I think, in general. And it is. It's a way better movie than 3 is. 3 is fine. Back to the Future 2 has all those things. I think as we approached 2015, it got more and more popular because of the things that it got right and the things that it got wrong, and things that it was almost close to getting, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Let's just talk about Back to the Future 2. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Special episode of the Bond podcast, Back to the Future 2.
I will say real quick on Back to the Future 2, I do like Back to the Future 2 better than 3, but I also like 3 better now than I did, I think, when I was younger, weirdly. But it's just, they're very different movies. Anyway, so this finished, so we're talking about License to Kill again. This finished, I said, 36. It made close to $1 million less than Fletch Lives, and it made about $3 million more than Lean on Me. I didn't know Lean on Me made that much money. But I guess that's not that much money. But I mean, I guess that was kind of a thing when it came out. Yeah. So production. So we've got John Glenn is back. This is his fifth fifth, right?
Fifth.
Yeah. Fifth and final Bond film. He directed all the 80s Bond films, with the exception of Never Say Never Again, which is technically not canon. So Richard Maybaum is back. This will be his final credit.
Yep.
So there's not another Bond film, which we'll talk about this on the next episode, but there's not another Bond film for 6 years after this. So Richard Maybaum dies in 1991. Maurice Binder, the title designer, he also dies in 91. So this is his last Bond film. And then Albert R. Broccoli, this is his last producing credit. He doesn't die till 96, but I guess he was not in good health. And, he was not one of the producers, I guess, listed on GoldenEye, or at least wasn't involved. As much. So he dies in 96. So unfortunately, all three of those that we've been talking about a lot, it's kind of weird.
And
I
believe
people are like going away.
I believe also, and I don't think it has anything to do with health or a death or anything like that. This is the last John Barry score. Actually, the last John Barry score was the previous one. Michael Kamen takes over for John Barry. Yeah,
he was not able. I don't know when Barry died, but health reasons was why he couldn't do this one. And they even tried to give a little more time to him because he couldn't fly. Like he had just had surgery or something and he couldn't fly. And so they were going to give him. And this is before, now this wouldn't be an issue, right? You would just do the score at your house or whatever, and then you would send it. 1989, it's a little different. But so if you couldn't fly somewhere, you couldn't work. So it's terrible. But Kamen's a good composer, though. Die Hard, Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon is going to come up so much in this podcast. So if you do not like Lethal Weapon, I apologize. But it factors into this movie.
It really does.
It's crazy. It
really does.
So we got all those guys back for their final bout. A couple of the actors are back for their final bout too, not because of health, but because of just everything changes after this. License to Kill is the first Bond film that doesn't use a title of an Ian Fleming story. We will not be talking about anything. We will not have our third segment this week because there's really not much to talk about. The original title for the film was actually License Revoked.
Yep.
But U.S. test audiences are fucking dumb. I don't know why we do this anymore.
It seems like they're just like getting people who... I don't know what it is. I don't get it. And they give them so much power, especially back in the day, test audiences.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Why are we trusting the opinions of people who don't know what the word revoked means? That's what I don't get. But yeah, I saw this in the behind the scenes. John Glenn said, "Yeah, I had to change it because Americans didn't know what revoked meant," and he's like, "I find that really hard to believe." But anyway,
yeah, and the people thought they kept thinking of driver's license, like that's what was in their mind, and so they didn't want it to be called that. I don't think License Revoked is a great title, so I don't care. But it's just weird why they changed it.
Yeah.
So that had to happen. So now it's License to Kill. The plot is mostly original. They do take the shark stuff is from Live and Let Die for the most part. Felix gets attacked by a shark in Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
And then there's a short story called The Hildebrand Rarity. That's where the Milton Crest character comes from. So just a couple. Oh, and then they compared this movie. They were very influenced by Yojimbo.
Yeah.
The idea that Bond is able to defeat the bad guy, but he doesn't really have to physically fight him for the most part. He sows seeds of distrust amongst the other people in the organization.
Yeah.
And then so that's kind of how he destroys. He kind of brings them down that way because the Sanchez. Is it Sanchez? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. It's Franz Sanchez.
Yeah, he can't trust anybody anymore. So that's kind of that's kind of the Yojimbo stuff. I would never think of Yojimbo when I thought of this movie though. But so this was the first Bond film to be shot entirely outside of the UK. That was for budgetary reasons, taxes, or something.
There was some sort of film tax act of some sort passed in the UK. It was in '85, I believe.
Something like that.
That actually affected more movies than just this one.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit when we talked about Living Daylights,
and
too.
So it was apparently really expensive to make stuff in the UK, and so the only thing that happened with this movie was that they edited it and I think there was something else that they did post-production, but they didn't shoot anything.
It was sound, like if they had to re-record any of the sound, they did that at Pinewood. But it was mostly just touch-up work after the movie had been shot. They actually used, it was this studio in Mexico, a real popular studio in Mexico called Estudios Churubusco. I'm going to go with that's my pronunciation. I apologize to anyone who got offended by that. And then, so that's where all the interiors, for the most part, were shot. And they also shot some in the U.S. But U.S. and Mexico was, for the most part, that was the production. So they came to North America and they hung out. When Broccoli and Wilson, Michael G. Wilson, along with Richard Maybaum, when they were trying to figure out where they were going with this one, they wanted to try to do something a little different where they hadn't shot before. They went to China. They got permission from the Chinese government. They did. I don't know if they did scouting, but they went to China and they tried to figure out some stuff to do. But then they decided, I think cost had something to do with it. I also read at a couple places The Last Emperor factored in to why they didn't shoot in China. They thought that it had removed some of the novelty from filming in China.
I don't know. I think it's just the cost, and especially with the behind the scenes where they said that they were scouting China and they said it just didn't work out. Apparently Peter Lamont, who's been the production designer since Ken Adam left back in after Moonraker. Peter Lamont said, they went into Broccoli's office and Broccoli's like, we're going to shoot this in Mexico City, and that's that basically. Is he basically said we're shooting there or no movie is basically what it came down to.
Yeah. Well, and the outline that they were doing for that story, which would have included there'd be a fight scene along the Great Wall. There was a fight scene dealing with the Terracotta, I believe that's how you pronounce it, army. But there were some things in there that Broccoli was concerned the Chinese government would not let them do. So it felt like he thought it was going to be more of a pain in the ass, and he just thought it would be easier to go shoot somewhere else. And then they changed the story, obviously, because they had to. And then, so that's why they decided to do like the drug cartel and everything. They created this fictional, it's like the Isthmus. Like the Republic of Isthmus. It's this, totally fake place, but that's where the Robert Davi character is like, he's basically like Noriega. I mean, that's who he's patterned after.
That's it's Noriega and it's Pablo Escobar, sort of a combination of where drug lords were sort of like I guess controlling the world or ruling the world at the time.
Absolutely. This is, I mean, like most Bond films, this is pretty topical. They were kind of going at stuff that was pretty topical, especially in the 80s. Miami Vice and stuff like that was also dealing with a lot of that. If you don't know much about Noriega or Escobar, I would just Google it. I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, so but I'll just give you but that's who basically that character's based on. Also, they had an issue. I don't know how anybody turns a movie around in 2 years, because there always seems to be all kinds of shit happening. The WGA goes on strike, and Wilson and Maybaum, they had not written the script yet. They had done an outline, but they hadn't actually written the script. So that caused a problem.
Well, Maybaum said, I can't possibly write while my, union guys are on strike.
Oh, exactly.
And Michael Wilson, who I think is sort of like wearing several hats in this. He's a producer.
He's a producer.
So he can just go ahead and start writing if he wants to, and it's not a big deal. So he just, I think most of this probably is him writing the script, and then maybe Maybaum comes in with some other things later after the strike's over. But
a little bit. There isn't a lot talked about him. I don't know. I think he was involved a lot early on, and then when the strike happened, he kind of got out. And I think he does come on later and help out a little bit. But they were having to audition actors with old scripts. Carrie Lowell read from A View to a Kill, for instance. The script was intentionally made darker. They thought that fit better with the way Dalton approached the role. And we talked about that in the last episode, where him saying like the traditional Bond stuff didn't work at all. Like, I mean, it was weird and it just didn't make any sense. So you kind of don't really get any of that in this one, for the most part. And then they also, when they were talking about the script, they referenced Yojimbo and A Fistful of Dollars, which A Fistful of Dollars is basically, Yojimbo actually is an adaptation of a Dashiell Hammett novel called Red Harvest. And there's been a bunch of different takes on that. Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone. That's That's another one. So those were definitely influences. I already mentioned the Republic of Isthmus. That was a fictional place, and the Sanchez character was supposed to be based on General Noriega.
Yeah.
Also, the drug-related revenge story that was really common. That was really popular in action films. Lethal Weapon had that, for instance. Beverly Hills Cop 2, both of which were huge hits in the same year Living Daylights came out, and RoboCop, which also came out in 87. So that's kind of where they were taking all that. And this is Timothy Dalton's second appearance and his last. Probably get into that a little more on the next episode. They don't automatically stop working with Timothy Dalton. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens. They do write another script for him. So, I mean, it's not like they wanted to get rid of him, but it was just after the performance of this, and they didn't really know what to do with Bond anymore. So, unfortunately, this is his last appearance.
I guess we will get into that with GoldenEye, but there was a big rights issue with who owned the name Bond and everything, and it's MGM, and I can't remember if there was like maybe Sony or somebody like that was in it. I don't remember who. We'll know more, I guess, when we get into GoldenEye. There was a huge rights issue that was going on. They were going to do Timothy Dalton, but it was just the way everything was going. It was impossible to tell when they could even come out with another movie.
Yeah, that ends up being kind of the main reason. Like, I think a lot of people say, well, License to Kill didn't make enough money, and nobody liked him. That wasn't true.
Yeah.
But it had more to do with that thing. And then just by the time they were actually able to make one, I guess it made more sense just to start fresh. So. Carrie Lowell, who we've already mentioned, she plays I guess the main female in this. I'd know her mostly from Law and Order. My wife is a huge Law and Order fan. She was on that for like 3 or 4 seasons. I want to say she was she was either right before or right after Jill Hennessy. I don't remember which, but she's somewhere in that era. She was like the assistant district attorney or whatever. Lowell, she was a little nervous doing this. She didn't really see herself as a glamour girl, and actually it's really interesting to see her with long hair, because you don't see typically she has short hair in everything she does, and that was a wig, and then they actually created a whole thing where she said, I got to go get my hair cut or something, just so she could go back to having her normal hair, which I thought was funny.
Oh yeah.
But when she shows up, it's weird. You're like, oh, that's Carrie Lowell. Now I see it now.
Yeah. Yeah. The apparently the audition, she was told this is a secret agent who likes to go out to bars or something. So she showed up to her audition in a t-shirt and jeans.
Yep.
And then, so awesome. And then apparently somebody, like maybe Timothy Dalton or somebody, said, you need to get a better wardrobe, I guess. And then she came back in something like she says in the bit behind the scenes, she says more va-va-voom is what she says.
Yeah, I guess they meant like the fancy bars that you would find in the UK, not the dives or whatever. I love that she showed up in a jeans and a t-shirt. That's amazing. It makes me like her more. Robert Davi.
It's Robert Davi.
That's right. It is. I've said Davi too a couple times already. I apologize. Robert Davi. I knew him at this point. Goonies was probably the main thing I knew him for. He was one of the Tortelli brothers.
Yeah.
Or is it not Tortelli? Is it Fratelli?
Fratelli, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Fratelli, I think.
He was he plays Franz Sanchez. He is I just call him Sanchez because that's what everybody seems to call him. He is a drug lord in this Latin America, this Republic of the Isthmus or whatever. Davi considers himself a method actor. I don't know that I've ever thought of him as a method actor, but that's what he says he is, so that's fine.
Yeah.
He did a lot of research on Colombian drug cartels. And he said the other thing he was trying to do was he decided to try to make Sanchez a mirror image of James Bond.
Yeah, the idea of was that I think he and Timothy Dalton wanted to do it more like the Fleming character Bond, and they went back and I guess read Casino Royale, and Fleming specifically mentions that the villain and Bond are mirror images of each other and everything. This is the only time I've ever heard of Robert Davi doing anything methody, but who knows? But yeah, he apparently went around and like pretended like he was this drug lord in real places and with the cast and stuff.
Yeah, I read that.
And so like he went in and did that type of thing, and people and people took him to heart. I guess they really thought he was. And there's an IMDb trivia thing that says an actual drug lord kidnapped him at one point and just said, "I really liked your performance of this," or whatever. I don't know how true that shit is.
Yeah,
but that's,
I saw that. I couldn't get it from anywhere other sources, so I just let it go. But that's hilarious.
I feel like that's probably bullshit, but you know what? It's something to throw out there.
And I might sound like I'm negative on Davi. I mean, personally, I am kind of, because he's got some political views. Let's just put it that way.
He's pretty deep.
Yeah, you can go look that up if you feel like it.
Yeah.
But I've always liked him in movies. I mean, he just never, I don't know. I'm trying to think after this, like he did Cops and Robertsons, which is not a good movie, but he just didn't do anything that great after this. But he's still acting, so he pops up every now and then.
I mean, he makes that Agent Johnson role. There's not very much to do with that at all, and he's completely memorable in Die Hard.
That probably is my favorite Davi, even though he's only. Which also I will just go ahead and say that while we're talking about that, Grandel Bush is in this movie.
Oh yeah,
he plays Hawkins. I don't think him and Davi have a scene together.
They don't. I mean, there is a part. I think there is a section where they're talking. I can't remember the dude who's talking to him. He's a guy who dies early on. The Everett McGill Killifer. When Killifer is doing the interrogation. That's when Grandel Bush shows up in the same scene with them. There's also another one during the helicopter airplane sequence where they're kind of in the same scene together, but nothing like what they are in Die Hard. So, and
they're but for anyone who doesn't know, we're talking about them because they are the FBI agents that show up later in Die Hard. They are Johnson & Johnson, right?
Yep. Big Johnson, Little Johnson.
Talisa Soto plays Lupe Lamora. She plays I mean, at least at the beginning, she's Sanchez's, I guess, lover, girlfriend, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't like a Grace Jones or Barbara Bach thing. Like, she's actually a very nice person. She's just in a situation that she can't seem to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
I will say right off the bat, I love Talisa Soto in this movie, and she's really good, and she has such better chemistry with Dalton than Lowell.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, and I guess like they felt like Bond and Lowell had to end up together, but like it made more sense for him to end up with her, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, especially the way the story arc is, it makes way more sense.
Yeah. Now I wasn't in the room when what happened, but everything I read was that she was one of 12 women that was auditioning, or that was made the final, cut or whatever.
Yeah.
And apparently Robert Davi said he would kill for her, so that's why they picked her. Which makes me think of that story with James Spader doing Secretary, when he saw Maggie Gyllenhaal. He said, let's hire her. I can definitely see myself spanking her.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that made me think of.
Yeah. Robert Davi playing James Bond, and apparently he was like really good at playing James Bond in that audition. He pulled it off. So, but Talisa Soto. Here's another little this is the pre-union basically, but Talisa Soto and a well-known character actor, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa.
Yep.
Are both in Mortal Kombat later on.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had him listed, but that's right. I forgot she was in it. She's also she was in the famous movie Spy Hard.
Yeah. Yep. Spy Hard. Yep.
Hasn't done a ton. She looks like her last credit was 2009, so I guess she got out of acting. But she's quite good in this.
I think she ended up marrying Benjamin Bratt.
Oh, that actually sounds right. I think you're right. Which is a Law and Order connection.
Yep.
She was married to Costas Mandylor before that. So
Costas Mandylor, wow, amazing.
That's the guy from Saw, right? And Picket Fences. That's what I'm thinking of, right?
Okay. Yeah, she's
just
been married to Benjamin Bratt since 2002.
Yeah, they're celebrating 21 years. Mm-hmm. Good for them.
Yeah.
I like Benjamin Bratt. They seem like that's probably a fun couple.
Yeah.
Anthony Zerbe. Probably most known to a lot of people of classic film fans, Cool Hand Luke.
I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to guess it's Zerbe or Zerbe.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But
let's go with Zerbe.
Yeah, I have no idea. I haven't heard his name ever pronounced, but I know him from The Matrix Reloaded and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's in Reloaded and Revolutions. He plays like the
counselor. It's like a counsel. It's a counselor of some sort.
Counselor, yeah. Mm-hmm. He's also, I remember this because I think it's funny. He's in this episode of Murder, She Wrote, and the episode's okay, but his character's name is Matt Matthews.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only spelled, what's funny is Matt is only spelled with one T. So
of course it is. Yeah, another guy who's been in a million things. If you go to the IMDb, he's got 115 credits, so it's like, you've seen him in a lot of things, yeah. And the same goes for Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa, because that guy, I think I looked at, let's see, IMDb says he's got 160 something maybe. 138 credits.
Yeah, he's in John Carpenter's Vampires. He's in Mortal Kombat, obviously we already mentioned. The Phantom, which is a movie I like. Yep. I feel like more than most people, but from like the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rising Sun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I forgot about Rising Sun.
Yeah.
Which I think we should forget about Rising Sun. I think that's okay.
Maybe.
So also playing one of the other villains, I guess, not a villain at first, but becomes a villain, is the great Everett McGill, which if you're a Twin Peaks fan, I think you probably are well aware of who he is. He hasn't done a whole lot, though. But what he has done, I've really enjoyed. He was in Twin Peaks. He was in the Twin Peaks The Return, I think it was called, on Showtime. Mm-hmm. He's in The People Under the Stairs, the late Wes Craven, one of his movies from the early 90s. Also, he's in Under Siege 2, which I'm a huge fan of. I don't know that everybody is, but...
yeah. I'm not, but I haven't seen it in forever. So,
well, one thing I love about it, I am going to go on. I do kind of want to talk about this for a second, because the one thing about Under Siege 2 that I do love is that it has the best team of fucking bad guys. Because it's Everett McGill, Peter Green, who is Usual Suspects, and The Mask,
Pulp Fiction, The Mask,
yeah. Patrick Kilpatrick. Who's in a bunch of action movies, always plays like a bad guy. You'd recognize him if you saw him. He's in Death Warrant. He's in Eraser, Minority Report, Last Man Standing, stuff like that. Jonathan Banks, of course, Beverly Hills Cop, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. And then they're led by Eric Bogosian, which is...
yeah, of all people, yeah.
But anyways, highly recommend check it out if you've never seen it or you thought it would be stupid. Just for the bad guys alone, it's kind of... It's a lot of fun. But anyways, he's in this. He plays like is he like a lawyer or something? Like he's works with the CIA because he's works with Felix.
Yeah, he's a CIA guy. He's just a bought off CIA guy.
Yeah. And at first I think he actually is fine, but then when he gets offered $2 million, he's like, "Fuck you guys."
No, I don't know that. Maybe that's what that's saying. I thought he was bought off from the beginning, but maybe
he might have been. He might have been. I might have read the scene
maybe
wrong.
Robert Davi's offer, because it is $2 million.
Yeah.
After he first offers $1 million, he goes to $2 million, and then later he says he owes him $2 million. So
I know what you're saying. I could have misread that scene, but also I got to say I love the Robert Davi thing with this though. Is I like when Everett McGill leaves. And then maybe it's Anthony Zerbe that's like, why don't we just kill him? Right. And then Davi's like, because my word means more to me than money. And I don't know, like, I just think about movies today where everybody gets double crossed. And I thought that was interesting. Like it actually like stood out to me that like, the bad guy would actually do that, which I guess does play into like this whole thing where Dalton is able to make him distrust people and stuff like that. And then we've also got Frank McRae. He plays a character aptly named Sharky. You'll never guess how he dies.
Well, and he's a descendant of the other Sharky from Dr. No, right?
Yes, correct.
He's a son.
Yes, and he plays... Frank McRae was all over like the 80s and 90s, but I mostly remember him as the shouting captain, and I think he does it in Loaded Weapon 1 as well, but he's also the Last Action Hero is the one I really remember it.
The first movie I think of him on is Batteries Not Included for some reason.
Is he in that? Man, I haven't seen that since I was a kid. I don't remember that very well at all. Somebody was talking about that the other day on another podcast I was listening to. I was like, I got to watch that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's not great, but it's just, I don't know, it seems interesting. Is it like set like in a nursing home or something?
I don't remember where it's set. I just remember that watching that movie in theaters, and I remember him for some reason in that movie, but yeah,
he's a great yeller.
But probably best known for that Last Action Hero performance.
But he's really good. Like, he yells really well. And you don't really see that in this movie, unfortunately. But
no.
But he chews out Schwarzenegger, and I swear he plays that same type of character in Loaded Weapon 1, but I haven't seen
Loaded Weapon 1 in forever, but that probably is right.
The only thing I remember Loaded Weapon 1 is Tim Curry is like one of the bad guys, and somebody shows up, and then somebody says, he came, and then Tim Curry says, that's personal. It's the only thing I remember out of that fucking movie.
It sounds about right for that movie.
And I can't ever find that. I've tried to find that for outtakes, and I can never find it. So maybe I'm making it up. Benicio del Toro, who I think we might have already mentioned him, but yeah, he's in the very young Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, he's like 21.
Playing Dario. He looks like a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he looks
basically
like
is a kid.
16 or something, but I know he's like probably in his 20s.
Mm-hmm.
But he plays Dario. He's one of Davi's henchmen. Doesn't get to be in it enough, but it's really interesting watching him because you can see like what he's gonna become. Like, you know, and I love seeing people like when they're younger in these performances after like I realize who they are and stuff. That's always fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Benicio del Toro might be the most famous person in this movie, but at the time was not famous at all.
You have to be right, because I mean, people know Timothy Dalton, but like he's not like a Hollywood, like he's never been like a big studio headliner outside of Bond, like Benicio has.
Yeah, Benicio del Toro ends up winning an Oscar for Traffic. And, he's sort of an above the line star, where a lot of these people here are character actors or whatever. And Dalton after this, I don't know if there's anything that he does that's known outside of Hot Fuzz.
Yeah. I mean, he shows up in things. He did that Beautician and the Beast. Why are you dissing that movie?
You're right. Well, how could I have forgotten that? That's amazing.
That was a Fran Drescher film, though. That was not a Timothy Dalton movie. But yeah, Benicio del Toro. Well, I will talk. Maybe the second most famous person in this movie is Wayne Newton.
Yeah.
He plays Professor Joe Butcher, who I remember always think he's like it's kind of like a religious kind of thing, but I don't even know if that's really what it is. But he is like somebody he kind of has like
it's like a meditation guru.
Yeah. But he's in the movie because he actually wrote a letter to I think Broccoli. It was Broccoli Wilson, and said he really wanted to be in a Bond film, and they were like, sure, you know. And he does kind of feel like weirdly added to it. Like, I mean, I get that he helps them, like, I guess they funnel money through him and stuff. I mean, that's kind of the impression I got. But I mean, you know, he's not needed. Like, he's absolutely, if he wasn't in this movie, you wouldn't be like, man, this movie's missing something.
Yeah. Yeah, he's running some sort of compound where behind the scenes they're putting the drugs in the gasoline. I really do think Davi's drug operation is way too complex.
It is.
It like, I don't think he has to do half the things that he does in this movie to make the money that he's making. So
I don't think
anyway, it's if there's anything about Bond movies that have stayed consistent, even though they've gotten more and more gritty and real, like, you know, like, you want to know what I mean. It's not like people in their secret underground layers anymore and all that, doing these weird, like, over the top, take over the world things. Yeah. But a lot of times their operation, the criminal operation, is there's just too many moving parts going on. Way too many. So it still kept that consistency. So and
anyway, and just for the fact there's way too many people that know what's going on. Like, I don't think I don't think you'd want to have that many people involved, just because the more people you get involved, the more likely you are to get caught, really.
Right.
I would think. I mean, I've never run a successful drug cartel. Run a couple unsuccessful ones, never run a successful one.
Right. Definitely does. Yeah, it doesn't work. I think it, I don't think it works here. And he's just, Davi's just, we'll get into the plot of it later, but
well, they know too much. Like they know so, and I think it's because of how stupidly overcomplicated the whole thing. But you're right. The Bond movies never leave that either. There's still stuff of that, like in the Craig movies. That never goes away because it's a Bond thing, right? Everything's got to be over the top, and
Yeah.
But you are correct. We already mentioned Grand Hill Bush. He plays Hawkins, which we mentioned. The main reason we mentioned him is because he was the Johnson to Davies Johnson in Die Hard. But we kind of talked about him. But he stays one of the good guys, doesn't he? Or does he turn too? Now I'm trying.
No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. The movie makes him a semi-antagonist, although he's not really an antagonist. Where they hold him. They're like, you can't do this operation where you're doing this revenge scheme. We're not going to let you do this revenge thing while you're here.
That's right. Right.
And so they hold him for M at the Hemingway house. Is it Hemingway or is it Faulkner?
Yeah, it is. No, it's Hemingway's house. Yeah.
Yeah. They hold him at the Hemingway house and everything for M to tell him that he's going to get his license to kill revoked and everything. So that's really, I mean, there's really only one moment where you would consider him an antagonist, but just because he's trying to prevent Bond from doing his revenge thing. But he's a good guy. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking, though. I knew there was some there, but that's right. He's kind of more he's helping M out as opposed to, helping Bond. We already mentioned Cary Hiroko Togawa, so I won't mention him again. Before we get into the repeat people, Pedro Armendariz Jr., Armendariz Jr., maybe? He plays the president of Isthmus. The main reason I bring him up is because his dad played Ali Karim Bey in From Russia with Love.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I thought that name sounded familiar. Yeah.
Yep. The senior played him. So same name. Yeah. So returning. So we have a returning Felix. We have our first ever returning Felix.
Yep.
And it's weird too because it's not like he was in Living Daylights. David Hedison was in Live and Let Die. Was very surprised when he got the call because he's never thought he would be in a Bond film again.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And also because is it Live and Let Die where they take the shark thing from? I can't remember because the shark thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. The shark thing actually comes from the book.
Interesting connections between for the David Hedison version of this is that he was in Live and Let Die. They did not have that shark attack in the movie, but they did take the shark attack from that book and put it into this. Yep.
So that's interesting. Yeah. And that almost has to be on purpose. I mean, if it's not, that's weird as hell.
Well, and just like I don't know if it was on purpose either, and this is something I had never considered before.
Yeah.
Although I don't think it really has anything to do with much, but they keep up the storyline of Bond losing his wife on his wedding day. That story, that reference it pops up in this, and this is the Timothy Dalton version. One of the things that I ran across was like, this is interesting because he was supposed to be the Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service where that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the interesting connects.
I didn't think about that either
as well. But it also happens with the Roger Moore Bond. They talk about his marriage.
No, that's true. Because a lot of people we've gone through this. A lot of people that were tested for Bond end up coming and playing like villains and stuff. So or side characters. So that's not that uncommon. But it's still super coincidental the way the David Hedison kind of thing goes. I will mention before I get into like Q and stuff, his wife, who you mentioned, or his newlywed wife in this movie, is played by Priscilla Barnes, who I know from Three's Company. She was. I don't know if she was the first one to replace Suzanne Summers, but she was in it pretty early on. I know she was one of them, one of the new roommates when after Suzanne Summers left.
Yeah.
I feel like she was kind of more the 8, because like when I would have actually been watching Three's Company, like when it was on, it would have had to been like early 80s. So I think maybe she was in that variation.
Yeah,
but I don't
81, 84 according to IMDb.
Yeah, so so there you go. She's in that, and she's not in this movie very long, which I'm sure we'll talk about because it's wild. Desmond Llewellyn is back as Q. Has quite a bit to do here, more than usual. Maybe View to a Kill was kind of the last one. I mean, kind of on that par. Maybe a little more to do than View to a Kill. Even he's around a lot more than he normally is.
Yeah, this is his biggest role ever, I believe. If I read his biggest his biggest amount of time in a Bond movie.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like because he just kept popping up, and I kept, man, Q's really in this one a lot. Like, it wasn't something I remembered. I think it's just more noticeable because we've been watching these so close together. And Desmond Llewellyn will return. He stays on throughout the Brosnan films. I think he makes it. I think he's in Die Another Day, I think. So I think that's his last one. Yeah, he gets
all the way to there, I think.
Yeah. That's a really, I can't wait to talk about that movie for many reasons, but that's a really like creepy scene because he goes down in the floor and it's like, I hope he says something like very, very like, just like, hope I get to see you again or something like that. Then the actor dies like a year later or something. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Because I think he was dead by the time the movie got released, if I remember correctly. But we'll talk about that later in a few weeks. Robert Brown is back. This is his last performance as M. He's about the same. Like easily, apparently he's the most forgettable M because we forgot they even had an M in the 80s. So not that there's anything wrong, but he's never fine.
Realize this though. There is in the Connerys.
Yeah.
And there's always a scene where he goes into headquarters and there's a scene with M and then later on it starts becoming less and less about going into headquarters. It's he's always on a mission already, or he gets his information just through other means, whatever. He doesn't have to go into the office. So that's one thing counting against him as his time as M is just that he's just kind of pops up in like a very small scene and then he's gone, so he doesn't get a chance to shine. So exactly. And Carolyn Bliss is back as Moneypenny. This is her second and her final performance as Moneypenny. They change all that up when except for Q, they change everybody else up when we get the Dalton. When we get Isn't
to
it Samantha? Someone named Samantha Bond who ends up being Moneypenny in the next ones.
I think that's right.
Like that.
Yeah,
it's like what a great name to be able to get into the James Bond movie.
It's like the actress in Friday the 13th Part 5 whose real name is Debbie Sue Voorhees.
That's amazing.
I'm almost positive that's the only reason she was cast. Too. I mean, there might have been another reason too, but that's Friday 80s Friday the 13th movies. Look it up. I'm not getting into that. So that's really it for the cast. Music wise, Eric Clapton was approached to write and perform the song for this movie. I wish that was one we actually had gotten recorded so we could actually hear it, but I don't think it ever was. It was considered. They wrote it or something because they decided to turn it down because they thought it was too gritty, which is really weird because this movie is gritty. And we'll talk about that, I guess, when we talk about like our opinions on the song. But it's odd. Gladys Knight ends up singing it. Gladys Knight ends up performing it. It's kind of loosely based on the horn line from Goldfinger, or not loosely. I mean, I think it's full on based on that.
I think they even got. I think there was even some litigation on this too, possibly.
I did not see that actually.
I don't know. I think I ran across that there was a question as to whether it was lifted. So
there probably was.
There's a good reason why I kind of like this song too, because that opening is what I really dug about Goldfinger. I like this song.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give that away. I like this song quite a bit. But it's a weird juxtaposition with the film itself. It's odd, but we'll talk about that. The end credits also. Oh, this was Gladys Knight's first top 10 hit in the UK since the late 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, I know that's unfair, man. Gladys Knight in her prime, man, she's freaking amazing. I mean, she's still a great singer, but the end credits featured a song, and this might be the first time the end credits featured a song that's actually more popular. Maybe not necessarily which is this Patti LaBelle's version of "If You Asked Me To."
Yeah.
Celine Dion also does a version of this, a little while later. That I think that's a pretty big hit. I mean, Celine Dion's had a ton of hits. I think that was one of them. I mean, I remember hearing it all the time. And I always forget it's in this movie. I always forget.
Yeah, me too.
John Barry we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but John Barry wasn't able to score. He had health issues. This is well before you could just email somebody your score or whatever. Well, I don't think they email, but whatever they do now. He couldn't get on a plane. He wasn't well enough to fly. So they couldn't get him to the recording. So interestingly enough, they used Michael Kamen. Michael Kamen, really well known for doing like scores for action movies. He did Lethal Weapon and Die Hard. Lethal Weapon was 2 years before this. Die Hard was 1 year before this. So that was a good pick, I think. Were you saying this was the last John Barry? Oh, it has to be, right? Because he passes away, doesn't he?
Yeah, John Barry's last one was the Living Daylights.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah, like he was. I guess this is the last time he's approached because, he did live till 2011. But yeah, no, that was his last one. You are correct.
Yeah, and then Kamen comes along, and he fresh off of Die Hard, which has a really really good score, and you can hear some of the tones of Die Hard in this when you're watching this as well.
And they're
different.
Michael
Kamen, great choice.
Die Hard there's some similar tones, definitely. Die Hard and Lethal Weapon are Lethal Weapon's got like all the sax. Like that's always what I remember about Lethal Weapon. Is that that's a terrible impression of a sax. Sorry guys.
Oh, that's how it goes.
And honestly, that's what Meredith, my wife, and I always talk about this with current music. There's not enough sax. There just isn't.
No, it's very true.
We need to go back to the sax, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Horns too. I like horns. Let's do all that. Mm-hmm. Reception. Reviews were kind of all over the place. This was like not really, this was definitely not universally loved, but most people just kind of said it was meh, like it was just kind of mediocre or whatever. Hilary Mantel in The Spectator, she wrote, "It's a very noisy film. There is a weary and repetitive note to the frenzy. The sex is low-key and off-screen, but there is a smirking, perverse undertow, which makes the film more disagreeable than a slasher movie." I thought that was interesting. And not to reflect my opinion on the film, but not that far off. But yeah, most people just kind of found it mediocre. Dalton was praised more than I had remembered. Like a lot of people were kind of like saying, Dalton's good. We just don't like the story, basically. The darker tone didn't jive well with most people. And we also kind of talked about the summer of '89, how you had like Batman, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Lethal Weapon 2. So this got compared to those. Whether that's fair or not, that's what happened. And it just, a lot of people said it wasn't as like lively and as energetic as like these other action movies. Action movie had really changed in like 2 years, like between 87 and 89, because 87, you've got Predator, you've got Lethal Weapon, you've got RoboCop, and those just kind of set the tone for what's going to come. And, so I just don't think a lot of people wanted to go watch Bond. But Roger Ebert loved it. He gave it 3.5 stars. Mostly noting the stunt work, and he also said it was one of his favorite recent Bonds.
I mean, stunt work is generally always good in these movies. I mean, to consider what they did and invented and whatever. This one has one of the most spectacular stunts they've ever done in it. So, may not seem like it. You want to go ahead and talk
about that? Which one are you talking about?
The one where the helicopter catches up to Davi's plane and
of course. Yeah.
This is something that when you watch it with today's eyes, you're thinking, oh, they just did something on a green screen or something like that. No, they actually shot this thing, and they had to do a lot of obviously the plane when they tie the plane to the helicopter, that's not a real plane.
Yeah,
but when they're doing the stunt where the plane's in the air, the guy has to get on the plane while it's in the air. And from what I understand, not only that, they have to get off of the plane immediately once they get on, because it would stall the plane if they stayed on it too long.
Yeah.
So like sure. So the stuntman playing Bond has to climb onto the plane, and then they have to cut. Guy has to get back onto the helicopter, or else it stalls the plane crashes. So You know, a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, that tying the plane thing, I remember when we were doing the Sins video for this, I was like, oh, I'm going to definitely send this shit for being fake. And then, yeah, they had to do a couple of fake things, but that's a real stunt. That's just an insane stunt they pull off. Yeah.
You wonder if Tom Cruise just watches that on repeat. He's like,
probably
I can
does.
do better.
Probably does. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was actually, weirdly enough, I mean, they're very different, but when I was watching Mission Impossible Fallout in the theater, I did think about License to Kill, because so that's obviously stuck in my head, you know, as far as, you know, just interesting plane stunts. I mean, the thing in Fallout is crazier and there's a lot more going on, but it did just kind of make me think of that. Retrospective reviews are a little better. It still doesn't really it still kind of doesn't ever get too highly regarded. But a lot of people mostly now talk about how, you know, they just think it sucks that we didn't get another Dalton film. And which is said, we'll talk about that on the next episode. I mean, they do try to do another Dalton film. It's not like he's fired after this, but there's a lot going on.
I mean, the time ran out on him. That's what it ended up. The time ran out.
There's 6 years between films. Has to be the longest gap. Has to be.
It is.
Because I think even with the Crack, I think the most they ever went was 3 or 4 years. And some of that had to do with COVID and all that kind of stuff when they couldn't release. So, it's not like they wanted to wait
you
that
mean
long.
No Time to Die's release date got pushed back because of COVID?
Yeah. So I think it still wasn't 6 years.
Even that wasn't 6 years. Yeah. And the distance between Brosnan and Craig was not 6 years.
Yeah, it's 4. It's just 4 years.
Yeah, so this
not
is
even quite 4.
So this is definitely the biggest gap. I don't remember if we brought this up, but the finale where they're on those desert roads.
Yeah, we did not. Talk about this.
Yeah, in the finale where they're in these desert roads and everything, there's all these really dangerous turns. Of course, they're using all these trucks.
Yeah.
On these things. Now, that area of California that they shot that in, that was a shut down actual highway system that where a lot of people had died because there's so many it's such an impossible drive, and you know I don't think there's any real safety precautions. There's not not a lot of guardrail type stuff going on there, but they quickly thought that area was cursed or haunted or whatever, because there were so many things so many weird things that was going on. There was a stunt with Dalton where he's supposed to get into a truck and there's supposed to be nothing around him when he gets in the truck and starts driving. And yet when he got in the truck and started driving off, a sudden truck was just there out of nowhere. John Glenn swears up and down that he saw figures standing close to some of the stuff, and he would he thought they were like people, bystanders or whatever, and he had to go shoo them away. But he would go shoo them away, and they'd just kind of disappear or something like that. Some weird stories come out of this. And the other thing is there's a big, huge explosion with one of these trucks, and I think it's one of the ones where he pushes it down. And of course, also, when he pushes these trucks down, that's another thing that almost nearly killed Dalton or whatever on this.
Yeah, Dalton had a rough time.
But in the explosion that happens, there's a guy taking still photographs during all of this, and one of the still photographs has this shot that looks like you have the big explosion of flames and everything, but you also have this thing that looks like a giant claw coming down. It looks like a demon's claw coming out of it. And apparently a bunch of people saw the dailies on this, and there's 4 or 5 different angles of this explosion, and they could not find the part where there's that demon's claw anywhere. It's just something that this still photographer caught, and I'm going to assume, because I do not believe in this type of shit.
No, me either.
I'm going to assume that the still photographer, his speed of camera and what got captured on film is different from what they got on the moving film. So there's probably no way to find that demon claw in that moving footage. But anyway, the whole finale apparently was they were a little worried about it. Nothing happened. That's the great thing. Obviously, nothing actually happen. No consequential thing happened. Like you hear, there wasn't some sort of like poltergeist or exorcist. Yeah, there wasn't some poltergeist or exorcist type situation going on here, but they did believe that the place that they shot that was cursed or haunted.
That could make an interesting episode of our buddies over there with Cursed Films if they get to do a third season. Of course, I'm calling them our buddies. We talked to them once, but
we talked to them. They know our buddies. We have them on speed dial,
just like we're good friends with Dolph Lundgren.
Yep, and Rennie Harlan.
And Rennie Harlan, that's true.
Mm-hmm,
God, Rennie Harlan needs to make a Dolph Lundgren movie. Like, that needs to happen.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. I did not put that down. I read a little bit about that, and I saw some stuff. But, And see, I think, too, like, I mean, they're in the desert. I mean, so, like, you see things, right? Like, you hear people, like, seeing mirages and stuff like that. I don't know. Like, I just feel like shadows were playing tricks and all that kind of stuff. But,
yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
I mean, but that's, for people that believe in that, which is perfectly fine. If it ever actually ends up being true, you guys will be better off than we are.
Yep, absolutely.
We'll get killed before we believe it's true.
You'll be prepared, and we will not.
We'll be like, there's no way that's a ghost coming at me with an axe. And then my head
Chris is the first one to die in that horror movie. Yep.
Oh, I would definitely be the first one to die in a slasher film, which is crazy because I've seen enough of them. But I would just flip out. So there's no way.
Well, the first one is the one that's always the first one is always going to be the most unaware one. Then after that, you should be
maybe I'll be
like on guard. Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, so that's all the fun behind the scenes stuff. Next, we're going to talk about the movie, like what we thought of the movie, which we've already talked about a little bit, but haven't gotten into too much detail. So we'll do that now in a segment we like to call Review to a Kill.
I've got you in my sights.
Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
There's no need to shout. I'm not shouting.
Why don't you stop your whining and get on with it? I've heard this shit before.
We're going to give you our thoughts on whatever film we are discussing this week. This week, we are discussing 1989's the last Bond film of the 80s, the last Timothy Dalton film, the last film directed by John Glenn, and all kinds of things, License to Kill, which we haven't even talked about the fact that it's fucking spelled Licence, which I did research on this. This is a British thing, but what I could get confused about is apparently if you're using, I might get this wrong. I think it's if you're using it as a noun, it's the ENCE. And if you're using it as a verb, it's ENSE. But like, I don't know. That's still weird to me. Because
here in the States, it's ENSE no matter
always.
what.
Like we never do the ENCE. In fact, Microsoft Word tells me that's not even a word. So,
Yep, it's a British misspelling.
Yeah, it is. It is. Trust Microsoft Word over the UK.
Yes, correct.
Man. Here we go. So, in License to Kill, a very vengeful James Bond goes rogue to infiltrate and take down the organization of a drug lord who has murdered his friend's new wife and left him near death. And I wish the movie sometimes was that simple, but as Chris said, it's a little overcomplicated. But that's pretty much what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been really excited to talk about this one with you because I feel like we might not be as far apart as I thought we were. But please let me know what you think of License to Kill.
I mean, just like just like the other Dalton, the Living Daylights. I think this is better than I remember it being. And I've discussed this before. Either this is the first one I saw in theaters or Living Daylights, but I definitely saw this in theaters. I definitely did see this in a theater. And all these years, I still, anytime this movie comes up, I think of Robert Davi. Because Robert Davi's performance and sort of his interpretation of his character has always been great for me. I think he's one of the best villains that Bond has to offer, actually. He may not be super memorable for a lot when you have all these over-the-top guys. You have the Blofelds of the world and everything. But I really do like his interpretation of this character, and he's very memorable. I'll never forget. obviously, because I was 12 years old when I saw this. When Milton Crust gets into that decompression tank and they blow up and blow it, which is probably the grossest scene in a Bond ever. But they had to cut it down, I think, because it was so gruesome when they first did it. But I just remember that line where because there's all that money that's in the thing, and the guy's like, "What do you want us to do with the money?" And he goes, "Launder it," is what he says, which is a great. It's a great Bond, pun in this thing. But I just remember Davi so much in this, and I love his character just because he really does value loyalty over money in this. Like, yeah, if you try to steal his money, it's not about the money, it's about you going against him more than anything, and that's fairly consistent all the way through the movie. There's a point where like he really doesn't. There's money like getting wasted left and right in this movie. It's crazy how many times there's money just like just floating away, and he's just screw it, I don't care about that. I mean, that's how much money he's making too. I mean, he doesn't care about it. But so that's always appealed to me. The thing that I don't like about License to Kill is how influenced it is by all the 80s action movies that came before it, and obviously the grandfather of them all, Dirty Harry, which comes into play here. This is such an 80s story. The guy who's selling drugs, the drug lord, the revenge story. There's so many of these revenge stories, especially like with Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Lethal Weapon movies, of course, are all about it. And like people that work like agencies and stuff, like people going rogue, but people not following their boss's orders. That was very much an 80s. Was a huge
staple.
Part of the 80s. Over the years, Bond has been influenced by a lot of movies that have been going on at the time. They make their own particular version of whatever's popular at the time. And unfortunately, what's popular at the time is this cop thriller convention, and they put it into this one. And that's what's always been my sticking point with this, is that it's just not a spy film. It's a revenge film. It's it doesn't have the same kind of like fun that I have with Bond discovering things about the operation and being able to move on to the next thing. And when he does discover things about this operation, I'm like, God, this just seems like stupidly complicated, especially when you consider that Davi's character is he's got all the cops in his pocket, basically. He's there's really not much of a reason to go this, like, do all this secret stuff back in the background where he's like got the drugs going from one boat to another, then it goes to like whoever buys it or whatever, it goes to an airplane, the airplane flies off, and the way he's disguising the drugs when they go overseas or whatever, where it's like, let's put this cocaine in gasoline and the gasoline will cover it up and we can deliver it via gasoline, and then there's a process that we use to get the cocaine out of the gasoline at the end of it, and then by the end of it you can sell the gas if you want, but like and his big deal in this one is that he's trying to get the Japanese market. Now I'm pretty sure this is where I'm going to get in trouble. I'm pretty sure these are all Japanese buyers that he's trying to sell to.
I think so.
But there's a point where Talisa Soto says the Chinese, which I don't think that's right, though, unless and of course they use the very wrong term Orientals all the way through this.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard. I think they're just basically saying those guys are Asians, don't worry about it. But I think it's Japan. But they say Chinese, so I don't know. So yeah, they're trying to dominate this other part of the market and everything. So anyway, The villain's operation just seems way too complicated. And getting and on top of that, you get the Wayne Newton character like gets his buy, like the way people buy it is they call in to this live show, like it's and they like, all right, this is how much we want, but we're going to disguise that on live TV by saying they're donating this amount of money. And when they say they're donating this amount of money, that means this is how much they're buying and at what price. And that's what the one guy's so excited about. They're like, oh my God, they went for the new price. I knew it, and it just seems just stupidly complicated to sell drugs.
I agree.
So anyway, that can also be fun, but like in the end, I think that's what drags this movie down for me, is that it is such a product of its 80s brethren that I don't like it as much as a classic Bond film, but it is probably better than most. You have 5 movies in the 80s. This is either 2 or 3, probably. I mean, maybe like Octopussy might be the top one. I think Octopussy might be the top one of the 80s.
I guess I could talk about License to Kill is the best one in the 80s in my opinion. I don't even.
Oh yeah.
And I don't even know that it's close. Octopussy is fun, but like I've just always. Oh, going back real quick though, I just want to say another 80s staple. Speaking of Anthony Zerbe's death, the Crest death, we really like to blow heads up. Like that was splatter effects became like a huge thing, mostly in horror films, but eventually it kind of made its way into action films and stuff like that. People love that, like that back of the head just like building, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
Those effects creep me out too, but that is easily that has to be the most violent death. Like at least easily. What we see.
Yeah, like if we saw some of the things that actually happen, I would say that the one that I think comes close to this is the Yaphet Kotto death.
Oh yeah, of course, but that just looks so bad. Like the Anthony Zerbe one,
that's a silly one.
Yeah, Anthony Zerbe one. I mean, kind of it, but it's also like the scene is just so much better. I guess. I don't know. So like 80s. Like I just don't think Bond. I just don't think they ever really figured out how to exist in the 80s. Like I don't think they ever really kind of like got there. Like because. It's like you had a couple of movies that were kind of almost there, like with Octopussy, and even like For Your Eyes Only. I mean, its biggest thing is that it's just kind of dull, but there's some interesting stuff in there. I think it's interesting I think it's For Your Eyes Only, where we were talking about how some of that reminded us of like, it kind of looked like almost like it was a canon film or something. And License to Kill definitely feels that way. Well, License to Kill feels like it's either like Joel Silver produced it or like Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, because I do think like Lethal Weapon. Oh, and also in 87 you had Beverly Hills Cop 2. I think Lethal Weapon and Beverly Hills Cop 2 kind of paved the way for what action movies were going to be a lot like for like the next 10 years. And then I think I've heard you say Michael Bay and freaking Roland Emmerich. I think I've heard you mention before that like they kind of set in place like what the action movies would be like after like 95 or whatever for like the next like 10 years, and then now of course it's MCU and comic books and all that kind of stuff. But I do like this action era. This is probably maybe I don't know if it's my favorite action era, but like 86 87 to like 95 there's just a shit ton of movies in that period that I just love. Like those are some of my favorite action movies. Speed's in there. And I think this one fits right in there. I get it. I get that why people get a little turned off, because it is unlike just about it really is. It's unlike, I don't think there's a Bond film like this one, really. At least the tone of it is very different. But I do think this tone fits Dalton better. I like Dalton so much more in this one than I did in Living Daylights. He's not having to give like all the one-liners and stuff like they were trying to have him do in Living Daylights. And we talked about that, where it just sounded silly when he would say stuff like Bond, James Bond. And in this one, he's just super serious, because I will say the one thing about this movie, like we've talked about this, Goldfinger and Spy Who Loved Me are in that like top tier of what we've talked about so far. I think this is in that next tier. I don't think this quite gets to that level. And I think part of it is because there is some stuff in this that just feels mean-spirited more than like it's dark, but it kind of crosses that line. Priscilla Barnes' death, not that you see a ton, but it's just weird to me that she is so like just brutally murdered and Felix lives.
Right. Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
And doesn't seem that upset. Like when he goes and sees Felix at the end, they're like laughing and shit.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's like your wife just died like 3 days ago, man.
I don't think I understand that at all. Like, I understand maybe you want to punish Felix Leiter in a different way or whatever, but like it's inconsistent with everything that happens. And there's no reason to like let him live either, because the whole point of this is revenge. So it's not like, I guess they felt like if they killed Felix Leiter off, they couldn't just come back with a Felix Leiter in the next. I don't know. Like, it's not like Felix Leiter has ever been.
I know. Would anyone have cared?
Nobody would have cared. And so I never understood that. And so anyway, I understand wanting to punish him, but like, oh, I'm just going to kill your wife, and then I'm gonna have a shark eat part of you, and then I'm going to take you out, and then put that note like he ate something that disagreed with him or whatever, or he got eaten by something that disagreed with him or whatever.
Talk about something that felt Die Hard. God, that felt. Yeah. Now I've got a machine gun. Ho ho. I mean, it felt exactly like that.
So yeah, I that's another thing that's weird to me about the plot of this movie is like, let's kill the wife, but Felix Leiter, he can still live for some reason.
And we're gonna be joking around by the end of the movie. We're just gonna be like, remember that time?
Right.
Oh God. And then the other scene that always stands out to me is when he kills Everett McGill. Everett McGill is. He finds out that he's trying to kill them because he's gone, he's against them now. And he's got that suitcase of money and he like falls back. And so like this door opens or whatever. And underneath him, there's water because we have sharks again. Obviously, we've already mentioned that.
Oh yeah.
So he's hanging over this like water full of sharks and he offers to give Bond half of his money. I don't remember exactly what Bond says, but Bond picks up the suitcase and he says something like, "You can keep it." And then he just throws the suitcase on top of him so he falls down and gets eaten by sharks. Yeah. I know Bond is a killer. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, I know Bond gets assigned to kill people. And I know he has to kill people in self-defense. This just felt like straight up murder. Like, this just felt like he just didn't give a shit about anything. Because, I mean, they had him dead. I mean, there's no way. I mean, they could have pulled him up and they could have, like, cuffed him to something or whatever. I mean, they could have done something with him. He definitely didn't have to kill him. And I don't know. It feels very un-Bond, I guess, to me.
Yeah. It's almost like the Roger Moore pushing the guy off the mountain.
Oh, that's a good point. It's exactly like that. Yeah. And Roger Moore said, like, that's just not something Bond would do. And I don't think this is something that Bond would do. I mean, I don't know. It's
and
weird.
Let's not forget, too, how he gets into this place in the, gets here in the first place. He goes in to investigate the aquarium or the whatever, the place where they're doing the scientific study. Of course, they're also... This is I really, honestly, I'm just going to take a step back here for a second. I really want to know, from the moment they get the drugs to the time it gets sold to somebody on the streets, what the fuck is going on in here? Because in this case, the drugs are being like packed in with a whole bunch of like maggots or something like that.
Yeah,
like he finds drugs in this pile of maggots, and it's like,
or bait or something. It's something.
How many different ways are these drugs getting ported all over the country? And it just seems like just anything that Bond runs into, there's drugs in it. Like, I'm surprised he doesn't like everywhere he goes, like he's like shoots the wall and drugs come out of it. That's how this is. But
reaches in his pocket. He's like, where did this cocaine come from?
Yeah, exactly. God damn it. So he goes into this, and Anthony Zerbe's there, Milton Crest, tells him, "Oh, we do this stuff for for research and everything." And Bond's like, okay, cool. And then he sees Felix's like fucking like wedding day flower, whatever, the corsage or whatever, sitting in the trash, basically, like on the floor, and that's how he's, I get it, but like. You really didn't have to put that detail in there for Bond to go in there that night. He knew that place was being used for the stuff, but that's the reason why he goes in there at night and puts his hands in all those maggots at the in the one scene with the really inept security guard.
That actually might be grosser than Cress's head exploding. Is him reaching in those maggots or bait or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I another scene actually that I thought was weird, just because I and these are all over 80s movies, but I really hate the scene where like the henchman like creepily hits on the main bad guy's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like in this case, Anthony Zerbe is drunk and he walks into Lisa Soto's room, and if he doesn't get called away, I don't know, he might attempt to like have sex with her. I have no idea.
This is another thing that's really fucking stupid. Now, this is really fucking stupid in this movie, okay? So, Milton Crest goes in to try to whatever he's trying to do with Lupe there in that scene.
Yeah.
He's trying to fuck her, but I don't know if he's going to... He does get interrupted, thank God.
Yes.
But he gets interrupted by this sea captain guy who's like... We have something big on the radar, sir. You better come take a look at this. And he goes into the bridge to see what it is. And all it is, now it is Bond underneath a Stingray like costume thing or whatever. But why was that important enough for the captain to go over there and tell him, "Oh, we got something big. You better come look at this." General aquatic sea life that we always see in the water all the time. It's basically the movie's way of saying we didn't want to go any farther with that scene with him and Talisa Soto. I think that's their way, but it's so dumb. It's so dumb. Anyway.
Well, and he knows, like, of course, I guess he's drunk, because I was going to say, like, this movie opens up on Davi killing a guy that is sleeping with Talisa Soto, and that's like the reason he kills the guy. And Anthony, I mean, Crest has to know about that, like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he was just going to take a shot, and then if she had said no, he would have wandered out. I have no idea, but I'm glad that scene doesn't go any further. It's a stupid scene. And then, like you said, come look at this stingray, which I think he says it's a manatee is what... That's what
it's
Crest
a manatee.
says.
I don't know what the fuck it is.
He goes, it's a manatee. Like, what the fuck did you call me to look at this for?
But it's funny also, I forgot about this. This is another thing that adds to the darkness of this movie, is after Davi kills that dude that's sleeping with his girlfriend, he whips her.
Yes.
And Davi in the behind the scenes said something like, he's like, you do a scene like that and you don't think anybody takes that in any other way than what it is or whatever. But apparently he got letters from all over the world from people who love the S&M aspect of him whipping her. And it's like, he's like, what the fuck? That wasn't what that scene was about. Anyway.
Yeah. Those scenes I always love hearing behind the scenes on scenes like that. Like I remember in Rob Roy, like where the Tim Roth, rapes,
Jessica
Lange. And then they were talking about it because it was on this table. And like the table kept moving and stuff, and then they would start laughing. So they had to film that. They had to keep filming it, take all these cuts, and it was like this horrible scene. But they're in the background, just like they're acting. So they're making it funny. I guess I don't know. Anyways, that's crazy. I'm not shocked people said that though, especially in 1989. Yeah. He's really good in this though. I guess I should go back because I feel like now I've started acting like I hate it. I really, really do like this movie a lot. It's one of my favorites. It's probably like in that top 5 or 6 when all is said and done. I don't know. We'll go through the other ones. Maybe all of a sudden I'm just going to love Tomorrow Never Dies. Who knows? But I've always enjoyed this one. This was my second in the theater, but still Dalton is kind of my Bond, I guess, because that's not my favorite, but I'm just saying that's who I knew as Bond, and I've seen this movie more times than most of the Bond films. I used to watch it a lot back then, and it's one I go back to every few years as an adult. There are things in it. It's not perfect. That's why it doesn't, and not that Goldfinger and Spy Who Loved Me are perfect. But I don't think it quite gets to that level because it does have this mean-spiritedness to it. The plot should be a lot simpler than it is, like you're saying. Like, I have no problem with them just stripping this down and making this a straight revenge film. But then, like you said, they've still got to have this crazy way to, like, ship the drugs and how they get the money in. And you've got this Wayne Newton compound and all this stuff. And it just doesn't seem needed. I love most of all the performances. Davi is great. I hate that he never really got I can't remember what all he did after this. Like, I know he does that stupid Cops and Robertsons. He's like the bad guy in that.
Showgirls. That's the Showgirls is probably the Showgirls has probably got one of the all time. I'm not going to repeat it here, but it's got one of the all time.
I know what you're talking about.
Like great lines in a bad movie, and it's him that delivers it. So.
Yeah. No, you're right. That should have gotten him way more gigs. I don't know why it didn't.
It should have. It should have.
I can't believe I forgot about Showgirls. I remembered Cops and Robertsons, but I did not remember. Showgirls. Cops and Robertsons, the great Chevy Chase, Jack Palance vehicle.
Yes, but
not the one with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. That was a different one. I know there's one where Chevy Chase and Jonathan Taylor Thomas are in a movie, but it's not that one. It's like the one. It might be Man of the House.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's Man of the House, yeah. Because then there was another Man of the House with Tommy Lee Jones and the cheerleaders later on. So, yeah, that was the first one, yeah.
I've sadly never seen either of those, but
I saw the Tommy Lee Jones one.
Yeah, it was 05, right?
I think it was.
I think it was 2005.
It was a really, one of the many great bad movies of 2005.
Yeah, no, I've not seen that. But yeah, so Davi didn't really get. He's so good in this. He's so good in Die Hard. He's really good in this. I'm sure if I thought, like, I talked a little bit about Maniac Cop 2 when we were talking about him. That's not a great movie by any means, but it's really weird that a movie called Maniac Cop 2 is as good as it is. So it probably kind of elevates it a little bit for me, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're like, why? There's no way Maniac Cop 2 is going to be good. And then you watch it and you're like, that's all right. But he just never really got. I don't know. He could have been like one of the big villains and stuff. But then they just started bringing back like other actors, like Dennis Hopper got to come back, and Ed Harris. They were using people like that for villains. So Davi got kind of left behind, which is whatever. He's really good in this though. And when I think of Bond villains, I think of him. He's one of the ones that pops up in my head. So I agree with all that you were saying. I mentioned when we talked about her, I love Talisa Soto in this. I kind of wish Bond ended up with her. Carrie Lowell is fine.
It's funny to me. I think I have a different view of the two women in this movie than you do, but I think you're right that he probably should end up with Talisa Soto, but
yes.
I like Carrie Lowell a lot.
Too.
Yeah.
I think, like, I feel like we say this a lot with the good girl or whatever, the main, like, the female that he's with, or he gets paired up with. They're not usually the best written. I think Carrie Lowell is a very good actress, so that helps, obviously. I don't think there's a lot on the page there for her, but she does make it better than it probably has any right to be. I just don't think they have chemistry.
Yeah, they don't have chemistry. For me, it's just an individual thing for me. Like, I don't think I care whether or not she gets together with Bond by the end of the movie. I think Talisa Soto's clearly the one that she probably should end up with, but Carrie Lowell all the way through this, I love all that stuff in the bar at the beginning when she gets introduced in the movie for the first time. There's something about Carrie Lowell in this that I was like, man, what is it that I love about her so much in this? And I really dig her performance. She's an actual agent that does actual agent stuff.
And
they're not like,
absolutely.
Doesn't seem token, really. Doesn't seem like a token thing, which is what they did. You know, even with The Spy Who Loved Me, it seemed like they were kind of given a sort of a token thing.
Oh, yeah. This feels like them trying to redo the Barbara Bach character better. Like that, that definitely. And I think and Carrie Lowell, like I said, very good actor. Much better. Probably a much better actor than Talisa Soto. Talisa Soto, I haven't seen her in a lot of stuff, though. But she's definitely a better actor than Barbara Bach. No offense to Barbara Bach. Love you very much. Glad you and Ringo are in love and all that stuff, but if Barbara Bach's listening to this, that would be amazing.
Oh my god!
But no, she's good. I was gonna say, like, I feel like the chemistry. The Talisa Soto character, is it Lupe? It's interesting.
Lupe.
because we have seen so many movies in a row where the bad guy's like girlfriend or whatever is like basically another henchman, like with Barbara Carrera and with Grace Jones. So it was actually kind of nice seeing someone that's actually like not a bad person, like doesn't really necessarily want to do anything illegal. She just got caught up in this situation that she can't seem to get out of. Like she can't get away from him. So that's interesting to me, but I do agree. The Carrie Lowell, and this is another reason why I really like this movie, especially compared to the other ones in the 80s. The Carrie Lowell character, like I said, some of the writing of her character is, especially once she starts falling for Bond. I think that's where I start losing interest in her character.
That's where it starts.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But at the beginning, like you said, it's cool because she is an agent. She does know what the fuck she's doing. She doesn't give a shit about him. She's just doing her job. Doesn't she even get irritated that he's not her secretary or something like that? Is that this?
She says that, and there's even a point where he's like, I don't need you anymore, and then she goes off and does her own little undercover thing right after that. So I just dig her character a lot. And so that's not the point you're making though. The point is they don't have the great chemistry.
Yeah, that's
and
all.
By the end of it, he goes after her like she's like the one or something, which is weird because I know they don't know that there's not going to be any more Daltons after this, but like I don't know why they bother with these. Like, I'm really in love with you at the end of this because you're never going to see that girl again ever.
They do that so much. Like at the end of Diamonds Are Forever, and it's so dumb. And I mean, almost all of them actually end kind of that way. But this one seems a little more like, oh, maybe she'll come back, but she's not. Yeah. I mean, she even if they made another Dalton, I doubt maybe she would have. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, they did start bringing back. Like in the Craig ones, they kind of do actually start doing some of that. Which doesn't always work out great, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, I agree with you. This ending feels very false. Like it ends on a false note. And then it goes right into that Patti LaBelle song, which is a perfectly fine song, but it's just like the tone of this movie was a 180 from that ending. And now I'm going into fucking If You Ask Me To, which is like one of the most beautiful written songs ever. But it's like it doesn't fit in this movie like at all. No. At all. Like maybe like Spy Who Loved Me or something, it would have been perfect. But like in this movie, it doesn't fit at all.
They did find the polar opposite of what movie you just saw. They found the polar opposite of it.
They try to make it like a typical 80s like romantic drama comedy ending. After they've had this insanely dark and gritty like drug movie for the first hour and 45 minutes. And then it's like she gets upset because he's talking to Lisa Soto. She doesn't realize that he's wishing her well with her because I guess she's going to marry the president now or something, or she's with the president. And she doesn't realize that's what he's doing. And then he goes and finds her and she's like, oh, that kind of, it's
pretty much.
It's like the end of Overboard. Like, have you ever seen Overboard?
No.
That's all this is. Also, don't watch Overboard.
Right.
Talk about a problematic movie. But no, I really dig this movie. Like I said, the tonal shifts with the romance don't really set well with me, but I like Benicio. We already talked about him a little bit. He's not in it enough. This is only his second movie. He was in Big Top Pee-wee the year before. So this was
Big Top.
He was like the dog boy or something like that.
I don't know. I saw Big Top Pee-wee in theaters. I do not remember Benicio del Toro in that.
I don't really know. I didn't
know who he was.
Yeah. When I looked up his acting, I just saw that was the movie before it, but I haven't seen that movie since 1988, so I have no idea. And then I like the supporting cast that we talked about. I like Frank McRae as much as he's not in it that long, but he's good.
Once again, the weird tradition of people who help Bond are always going to die. For whatever reason, there's a formula they follow, and they're like, well, whoever helps Bond has to die, because I guess that's how they insert drama and action into the movie, I guess, because if you have somebody who isn't going to die like Bond, you got to have somebody who has the potential to die. It's got to be what it is, because they all die.
Yeah, it's like we have to have a kill count. Like, it's like we don't have to, actually.
His death doesn't make any sense in this movie either, by the way.
He gets eaten by a shark, though, right? Because Sharky?
Yeah, I get.
Yeah,
well,
because the Benicio or somebody says something like, "What a way to go," or something about his name. I mean, there's some stupid comment made.
I don't know. Anyway, Bond sees him outside the window being driven in by the boat or whatever, and he's like hanging there.
Yeah.
And like they found him. Like, I don't understand. Honestly, I don't understand how they knew that he was working with Bond, because
I don't either.
It's a death that comes out of nowhere. It's not like some of these where you're like, oh, okay, that's someone that's clearly in a place that they shouldn't be, and they could die if they hang out there long enough. Sharky's just out in the middle of the water, I'm assuming, like he's in a boat just hanging out, and Bond has already gone, like, he's underwater. He's being he's got that manatee costume on or whatever the fuck. There's no reason that they would go out there and see him on a boat and go, oh, you must have been working with Bond, and then they kill him because, like, I don't know.
I agree. That is a very, very weird scene. I really like this movie, but I don't know that I have a whole lot else to say. I mean, I like the pace of it. I like the structure of it. Like, I think it just moves really well. Like, it's quick, even though it's 2 hours. It speeds through all this stuff. And I think that's something some of the earlier Bond films in the 80s kind of felt a little more not convoluted, but like structured oddly. This one just felt more like a natural, had a more natural feel to the flow of it, I guess. But I don't know. I've always really enjoyed this one. And I mean, obviously the older I get, and like you said, knowing women better, just having a better perspective on the world. Obviously there are scenes in this which don't hit me the same way, as they would have, like, when I was a kid, which is a good thing. But I still, overall, I just think I like how it's different. I like how it kind of has that 80s action feel to it. I know that's something and I think that's what a lot of people are turned off by. That's become my, like, because I've always been kind of confused why this one isn't liked more than it is, but I get that. Like, if you don't want that in a Bond movie, or you don't like that kind of action movie, which I know you're not saying that, but it is interesting to me. But it is interesting to me too, because like I said, I feel like people didn't go see this because they were out watching stuff like Lethal Weapon 2, and they had seen, like, Lethal Weapon and RoboCop and all this stuff before Die Hard. And then they're like, I don't want to go watch a Bond movie. Like, that just seems old. But oddly enough, this Bond movie was actually trying to be like those movies. So I don't know. And I mean, I'm sure it got a lot more eyes on it once it hit, like, home video and stuff. But and I do see people talk about it higher than, like, I have talked to people that they have it up as high as I do, or around there. But most people would not, like, put this, like, in their top 10 or anything if they were to rank Bond. And that's fine, but I don't know. It's in mine, so, whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, we just got our rankings left, because we don't need to do a thing about the book, because this is not really based on much of anything other than they took snippets here and there. So we are going to do our rankings. We are going to rank films in 5 different categories. Our scale will be based on something that Bond holds dear and near to his heart, as long as they are shaken and not stirred, and that would be martinis. So for each category, we will rank from 1 to 5 martinis, 5 being the best damn liquid that has ever passed your lips, and 1 being the well liquor you had to settle for or were too drunk to care that night. So the overall feeling just toward the movie.
Yeah, so the story itself, a lot of good, a lot of bad, and in the end, I have to give the story a 3. So it, there's a lot of good elements to it. Again, I think Davi sort of elevates this movie, and I think everything else around it's kind of ridiculous. There are enough things that I like about it that I don't think it's trash, and then there's enough trash in it that I don't think it's great. So I have to go right there in the middle there for it. It's a 3.
I get that. I'm not going 5. I mean, I love this, but I can't quite put it on that level with, like, Goldfinger and Spy Who Loved Me. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay.
The Bond, the performance, I think he's better in this than he was in Living Daylights. I really do.
I do too.
I think he's way better in this than he was in Living Daylights. I love that they didn't have him say the dumb lines. He has a couple of, like, cracks, but they make a little more sense in the context of this film, I think. So I'm going to give him a 4. I can't quite get to 5 with it, but it's right in that area.
He says something really. I keep putting it out of my head. He says something really fucking stupid when that dude gets crashed through the wall at the factory at the end.
He does say something dumb.
It's really bad, and you can tell. I can almost tell he didn't want to say it, but I guess they threw it in there anyway. God, I wish for this. He
tried to make
podcast.
It not work. He tried to get him to edit it out, probably.
Yeah, I think so, because it's just one of those things where it's just so bad that. But yeah, the Bond, I'm gonna give him a 3. Once again, he has not much. I mean, it's better. It's certainly better than the Living Daylights performance because, again, like you said, they're not making him do all the things that he did in that one. Yeah, and they're really going along with his philosophy on Bond on this. So I really do think he's good in it. I wish that we could have seen Dalton in a more, I don't know, this movie has a lot of different other behind the scenes issues going on with it, and
True.
They probably couldn't make a better movie with what they had. So I would have loved to see Dalton in a situation where they had the money and they had all the backing and whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give him a 3 on this one.
And one of the things, actually, I will mention this too. I forgot to mention this in the main review, but one of the, we had that whole thing where he basically quit. He, your license to kill has been revoked or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's weird because I like that aspect of it, and I think that could go in some interesting directions. But it kind of feels like about 20 minutes later, he's basically back in the British Secret Service because they're still kind of using him at that point. Like Q comes and helps him. So it's like that never really gets explored. Like he doesn't really face any kind of consequences
at all.
And probably rightly so, because he ends up busting up a really huge drug cartel, ring or whatever. But I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just
you. You can't have that. You just can't. You can't have that.
No, not at all. The villain, of course, that's Davi, which we've already raved about him. The henchman, I mean, that's Benicio, that's Anthony Zerbe.
God,
I mean,
this is
I
great.
guess Wayne Newton. I don't know.
Yeah, Wayne Newton's just kind of a comic relief kind of guy in this, and
he's in like 2 scenes.
He's fun. Yeah.
So are you giving that a 5?
I'm giving this a 5. It's a crazy enough to believe, but I think if we did a ranking of all the villains that are in Bond history or whatever, I would put him very high.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's weird. Like you said, it's kind of weird he doesn't get talked about more. But I guess this movie just doesn't have the fan base, that some of the other ones do.
Yeah, it's the movie itself and it's the Dalton era that prevent him from being talked about more. And like you said, Benicio del Toro is in. Like Benicio del Toro just adds to it.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's because we have the benefit of retrospect as to what he would become later. He does have a really weird line reading in this where he's like we're gonna give you a really good honeymoon or something like that. But for the most part, I do like his work as that undervillain, and he's pretty smart too. He's able to remember Bond even though Bond's wearing a mask. In that scene at the end.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Doing the drug and gasoline experiment.
Yeah.
He's really good at that. So yeah, I really enjoyed the villains. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. The honeymoon thing, it kind of reminds you of like Flippy for real.
Yeah. It really is kind of like that. It really is.
Give me the keys, you fucking cocksucker. God, I love that movie. Not really any gadgets in this, are there? I can't really think of anything.
There are some. Okay.
Well, Q does show up. That's right. Go ahead.
One of the dumbest things of all time, and they've done this in movies. I don't know if this is the first one to do this, but the gun that only works with your fingerprints.
Oh,
it's a biometric thing. Like, I understand what you're going for here, but how many times are you out there in the field and somebody is like, oh, I got the upper hand now. I got your gun and I can shoot you with it. That that can't happen enough for you to invest money in a biometric gun. And we've seen that in movies, a lot of movies since. The last one I saw it in, I believe, was The Fate of the Furious, maybe. Was it The Fate of the Furious where they end up going to Samoa and they have all the villains have biometric guns?
Yes.
So that's one of the inventions in here. There's some other thing that Carrie Lowell nearly kills everybody with when they're in the hotel room.
That's true.
there's one that this one doesn't really count, but Q himself has like a rake that has like a camera inside of it and a microphone. And one of the things that was pointed out in the IMDb trivia was that he scolds Bond constantly for losing technology on out in the field. And here he uses this rake one time and throws it into the bushes at the end of the thing. So yeah, there's some gadgetry. I would give the gadgets a 1 because they're shitty and don't really.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm definitely on the same board. I think I just like the idea that there's a Bond script where the description Q rakes the yard. I just like that. Yeah. like Desmond Llewellyn's like, what the fuck? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Now we can talk about the song. License to Kill by Gladys Knight minus the pips. I love this song. Like,
I do too.
It does not fit with the movie that it is before.
Doesn't.
I mean, like, at all. Like, I don't even know. Like, you could put this on The Spy Who Loved Me. You could put this on For Your Eyes Only, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of Bond films, but it would work. But, like, it's such a love story song. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, they try to work in the Carrie Lowell thing, I get. But, like, this movie isn't a love story at all.
It really does start to make you think that these songs are more about, like, especially at this point, we're in the MTV era.
Yes.
They're trying to sell the single, and it doesn't really matter if the song goes along with the movie or not, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We saw that a lot with movies in the 80s that started to just put in songs just for the soundtrack, just to get soundtrack sales. So I don't think we think of Bond in those terms enough, probably, that they are a business and they're trying to sell soundtracks in addition, which used to not be a big part of movie selling, but like this is what they're doing here.
Post View to a Kill, I think they realized, this can be like a moneymaker. Like, this can be huge, you know?
Yeah.
And so they really try to capture that over the next couple. Like, we had the Aha song on Living Daylights, and now you've got the Gladys Knight song. This song does feel more traditional. They use the Goldfinger stuff. Gladys Knight has a very unique voice. I think she's one of the greatest voices. It's funny. I hate to admit to this. I've seen every episode of The Masked Singer, and she is the only one that I have guessed correctly after their first performance. And it's just because I just know that voice, because like it's just such a distinctive voice. I never get her like confused with like other singers around that time. She always stands out to me. And she does a great job with the song. I love the composition, even though it is at times kind of ripping off Goldfinger, but it works. But I can't give it more than a 4 just because it doesn't go with this movie at all. Like it's like a 5-star song maybe, but it's like a 4-star as far as it like going with the film. And then I'd even throw in If You Ask Me To, because that's a big hit. That's also a really well-written song. I don't like it as much, but it's a perfectly fine. But once again, just doesn't fit the movie. So I can't, like, walking out of the theater on that song is the weirdest choice they have ever made.
Yeah. In darkest Bond ever. If you ask me to. Yeah. I think they're both, I think like what you're saying, they're both 5-star or 5 martinis in this case.
Yeah,
songs,
that's true. 5 martinis. I did say stars.
But they're 4 for the movie because, and maybe even you drag it down to 3.5 because of like how unrelated to what the movie is they are. So anyway, those are great songs, and I like them. I like both of them better than most. I know that you like A View to a Kill, but I don't. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you like this one. I feel like it's like you're about to watch an Officer and a Gentleman after you hear that song or something. Like not
right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that'll do it for this week. Thank you for joining us this week. We hope you will join us again next week. We will be talking about the first 90s Bond, the first Pierce Brosnan. They finally got Pierce. They finally got him.
GoldenEye.
Yeah, that is Tina Turner, and we do get to talk about Tina Turner, which is always fun. And yes, the movie is called GoldenEye. Also, before we go, we have social media. You can reach us on Twitter. We are at GoldSpy007. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter. I am at SamLoomis13. You can email us at golddiamonddeath007@gmail.com. And if you like this podcast and other things under the Cinemasins brand, we also have a Patreon you can join at patreon.com/Cinemasins. And if you have a second to leave us a 5-star review at your podcast listening app of choice, we would appreciate it. Until then, keep the martinis dry and shaken, the Baccarat shoe moving, and the Aston Martin fully gassed. This is Chris Atkinson and Jonathan Watkins signing off, and we will see you next mission.